Ethan was a man shaped by honest labor, known for his quiet demeanor and an unbreakable work ethic. For 6 long years, his life revolved around the concrete walls of a busy local auto repair shop. His mornings began at 5 a.m., stepping into a cold garage filled with the heavy scents of motor oil and exhaust fumes. As the head mechanic, his days were a relentless cycle of physical torment, lifting massive truck tires, bending over boiling engines until his lower back throbbed, and dealing with freezing winter drafts. By the time he returned home each night, charcoal and grease were permanently stained beneath his fingernails. Yet, Ethan never complained. He wore his physical exhaustion like a badge of honor for one simple reason: his wife, Chloe. Ethan adored her with a fierce devotion. He had promised her on their wedding day that she would never have to worry about survival again. To fulfill that promise, he willingly took on every grueling overtime shift and sacrificed his weekends. Because of his sweat, Chloe lived in a beautiful suburban home, drove a reliable late-model vehicle, and never felt the suffocating weight of financial anxiety. Every evening when Ethan walked through the front door, Chloe would greet him with a warm smile and whisper, "You work too hard for us, Ethan. I don't know what I'd ever do without a man as loyal as you." Ethan believed her completely. He trusted her with his life, his savings, and his entire heart. The fragile illusion of his perfect life was utterly obliterated on a humid Sunday afternoon. Ethan had just completed a punishing 80-hour work week, resting his aching muscles on the sofa. Chloe mentioned she was running down the street to the local market to pick up ingredients for dinner. In her haste, she left her personal smartphone sitting face up on the kitchen counter. Not even 10 minutes after she left, the phone on the counter began to buzz relentlessly, with a continuous barrage of notifications. Fearing it might be an emergency, Ethan walked over and picked up the device. The screen was illuminated with several preview messages from an unsaved number. "Is your mechanic husband still stuck at the garage? I miss the way you look at me. I'm waiting." A cold wave of nausea washed over Ethan. His hands began to tremble violently. He unlocked the phone using the password they had shared for years. Bypassing the text applications, his instincts drove him straight to the phone's encrypted cloud photo gallery. Inside, tucked away in a hidden folder, Ethan found a digital graveyard of his marriage. There were dozens of recent photographs of Chloe inside their own home, the very sanctuary Ethan paid for by destroying his health. She was passionately embracing and kissing a wealthy local real estate agent named Marcus. In one devastating photo, Marcus was sitting on Ethan's favorite armchair, wearing Ethan's grandfather's vintage gold wristwatch, laughing arrogantly into the lens while Chloe leaned against his chest. The digital timestamps on the files were the final dagger. They were taken on the exact afternoons when Ethan was working late at the auto shop, sweating under heavy delivery trucks just so he could afford the comfortable lifestyle she demanded. Tears of pure, agonizing betrayal mixed with the engine soot on Ethan's face as he stood frozen in the silent, empty kitchen. Most men in Ethan's position would have succumbed to a blind, destructive rage. They would have smashed the phone or waited to unleash a violent, screaming confrontation. But years of working with complex machinery had instilled a profound discipline within Ethan. He understood a fundamental truth. When an engine is completely compromised, you don't kick it. You systematically and quietly dismantle it piece by piece. With meticulous control, Ethan copied every single incriminating file, text thread, and metadata, log onto a secure encrypted drive. He then placed the phone back onto the kitchen counter, exactly as Chloe had left it. When she returned, humming a light tune and carrying her groceries, Ethan didn't say a word. He sat at the dinner table, looking at the beautiful woman who smiled warmly across the candles, while harboring a calculating monster beneath her skin. He ate his meal in absolute stony silence. Over the next 3 weeks, Ethan went to the auto shop every single morning precisely on time. He allowed Chloe to kiss his cheek and played the role of the unsuspecting husband perfectly. But behind his tired eyes, a flawless blueprint was being executed. Ethan consulted with a sharp local divorce attorney. Because the suburban house had been purchased entirely using the inheritance left by Ethan's late father, the law was entirely on his side. He quietly went to the bank and liquidated their joint account, transferring his hard-earned wages into a private trust. On the final Thursday of the 3rd week, while Chloe was out on a tryst with Marcus, Ethan took action. He took a leave of absence from work, packed every single piece of Chloe's expensive clothing into boxes, and stacked them in the driveway. Then, he personally changed every single deadbolt on the house. The trap sprang at exactly 8:30 p.m. A sleek luxury sedan pulled up to the curb, and Chloe stepped out, waving a flirtatious goodbye to Marcus. She reached the front porch, pulled her key ring from her purse, and slid the brass key into the lock. It wouldn't turn. Confused, she tried again, forcing it until the key nearly bent. Her confusion quickly flared into irritation. She began pounding her fist against the heavy oak door. "Ethan, open up. What is wrong with this stupid door? Why did you lock me out?" The massive wooden door slowly creaked open, but only a mere 2 inches, abruptly stopped by a thick steel security chain Ethan had bolted to the interior frame. Ethan stood in the narrow gap, still wearing his dark blue, grease-stained mechanic's uniform. His face was entirely expressionless, his eyes completely hollow, dark and dead. "Ethan, undo the chain," Chloe snapped, her voice sharp with entitlement. Without uttering a single syllable, Ethan reached through the narrow opening and handed her a thick manila envelope. Chloe snatched it impatiently, tearing the flap open. As she pulled the contents out under the porch light, her breath caught. Standing prominently at the top were the official, legally binding divorce petitions. Beneath them were high-resolution, color printouts of the photographs she had taken with Marcus in Ethan's bed. The color completely drained from Chloe's face. The papers trembled in her manicured hands, slipping from her fingers and scattering across the concrete porch like autumn leaves. "Ethan, no. Please," she suddenly shrieked, throwing her body against the door. "It's not what it looks like. It was a mistake. I was lonely, Ethan. Please, we can talk about this. Open the door." "You weren't lonely, Chloe. You were just ungrateful," Ethan said. His voice was completely calm, steady, and cut through her panicked screams like a razor-sharp scalpel. "Your boxes are in the driveway. Go see if Marcus has a room for you. Do not ever step foot on my property again." He pulled the door shut, and the heavy deadbolt slid into the steel frame with a loud, definitive metallic click. Chloe was left collapsing onto her knees on the cold concrete, weeping hysterically, completely exposed to the neighborhood regulars who had gathered to witness her ultimate humiliation. 2 years passed, and the invisible gears of karma collected the remaining debt with brutal velocity. Chloe's scandalous affair with Marcus evaporated almost immediately after her eviction. Marcus was a serial predator. He had zero intention of taking financial responsibility for a broken, divorced woman with no assets. The moment Chloe lost her comfortable home, Marcus blocked her number and moved on to his next target. Because the small town quickly learned of her grotesque betrayal, Chloe was completely blacklisted socially. She was forced to rent a damp, tiny studio apartment in a rundown district, taking a grueling, low-wage shift as a clerk at a local mega supermarket, just to afford her basic bills. On a freezing, stormy winter evening, Ethan was driving home from his workshop. He had recently used his accumulated savings to buy out the old garage owner, transforming the small shop into the most successful automotive repair center in the county. His hands were still calloused and rough, but his mind was at absolute, profound peace. As his heavy truck crawled through the pouring rain, it came to a halt at a red traffic light directly adjacent to the supermarket parking lot. Ethan idly glanced out the fogged window. There, shivering under the fluorescent parking lot lights, was Chloe. She was soaked to the bone, wearing a thin, frayed plastic jacket, her hands chapped red from the cold, as she desperately pushed a heavy line of metal shopping carts through the freezing downpour. Her expensive beauty was completely gone. She looked up and caught Ethan's piercing eyes through the tinted glass of his truck. She froze in the rain. A look of overwhelming, tearful humiliation and deep, agonizing regret washed over her features. She stopped the carts, taking a desperate, stumbling step toward his vehicle, her lips parting as if to beg for mercy, for a second chance, or for just a single drop of the unconditional loyalty she had so carelessly thrown into the mud. The traffic light clicked to a vibrant green. Ethan looked at her shivering form one last time, then calmly shifted his truck into gear. He didn't frown, and he didn't smile. He simply pressed the accelerator, the powerful engine roaring as his tires kicked up a spray of rainwater, leaving his traitorous ex-wife behind in the dark, freezing storm. The ledger was balanced, and karma had finally closed the account in full.